For me, just do the next right thing. Just take the next step. And my dad gave us some really good advice. He's like, well, just push on the door. If it opens, go through.
Well, Janet, I am so excited to have you here. It is just awesome to be meeting you, even though it's online, to actually be connecting with you and seeing you on camera, because you're obviously somebody that I've interacted with inside the home method community along your journey. And your name's cropped up, obviously, as your Facebook profile inside the Facebook community that we have there and on the Q&A. And like with all of my members, it's just such a joy then to actually see you in and put a face to all of that kind of house conversation and all of those challenges that you've been solving along the way. And I'm really looking forward to being able to dive into sharing more about your own personal journey in creating your home with the wider Undercover Architect community, because I know that you'll have loads of learnings and things that you've been thinking about and the way that you've approached it that's going to be super helpful for others to learn from for their own experience. And I'm just really grateful that it can often be tricky because people can be really private about their personal journeys in creating their homes. So I'm really grateful that you're willing to be here and share your journey on creating this home of yours. So I'm wondering if we can just start with the basics of you just sharing with us, a little bit about your family, about you, and who this project was actually for.
There's myself, my husband, 3 kids. So now my eldest is 16, then my son, and then my daughter's 14, and then my youngest is 10. At the time, we're talking 2021. So, take off 3 years. My youngest is going on 11. So there's a slight delay.
So think back to that time where you're going, okay, this is all going to work. We're going to have a 6-month settlement on this. These people who are buying our house have agreed to an extended settlement. We're going to try and make all of this work. You'd obviously, previously just said that the idea of building a new home wasn't something you were necessarily seeking to do. It was something more that Paul wanted to do, but you wanted a house, and you wanted a house that was going to fit everybody and suit everybody. So what were your impressions of building a new home back then when you thought about your block, and, what were you most nervous about or concerned about? And how did you sort of then go about kind of trying to upskill yourself in what you were going to be able to do, given that you'd obviously renovated and it had created an outcome that wasn't going to work for you long term? What was on your radar in terms of thinking about, okay, this is a new build on a new block of land. We've got these deadlines. How are you putting all the pieces together?
So I was a little nervous at the deadlines, but we had a buffer. Of course, when you're building, you're not going to move out of one house and all of a sudden move into the completed building unless, you're renting your house back or whatever. I said to Paul, I don't want to do that. I'm done with this house. I'm done with squeezing into this house. It's driving me mental. And so we ended up renting off some friends for a while. But anyway, and at this point also, our settlement date kept shifting. By the time we moved out in August, the settlement date was January. And then
on the block of land that you were buying, was that because the developer was sort of needing to do specific things in order to seal the plans and everything like that? Did you know why it was extending out?
There was problems with plan sealing. And I think a lot of it was electrical and plumbing and all the underground stuff. Now we know, spoiler alert, it wasn't done very well. And that actually did cause some issues, quite a few issues later on. But, you don't know what you don't know. And the developer's not the one going, oh, by the way, I've done the dodgy. But, on the surface, everything looked fine. The plan itself looked fine. Everything that had been submitted to council looked good. So if everything was done that way, sweet. Our own deadlines did keep pushing out. And then January came, and that was supposed to be, a bit longer, and it ended up being May that we settled. So 12 months after we put a contract on, we finally settled on the land. A lot changed by then, though. So I think my biggest fears was I didn't want to rush it. I didn't want to make the same mistake. and just go, yep, that's a good house. Yep, that looks good. Go with that. Sign off. Excellent. Start building. And then have that same horrible sinking feeling when you walk in and go, oh, I didn't think it was going to be like that. Oh, that's a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. Or, oh my, I didn't actually want that one there. Oh, is that too late? I didn't want any of that again. There's just that horrible feeling of, well, could have done a better job there, but I didn't. So it's too late now. Didn't want that. So that was my biggest fear, especially, a renovation, it's a lot of money. But a build, holy cow. I didn't want to have, and when we sold our house, don't get me wrong, I loved that house. I brought up my babies in that house. They all learned to walk down the hallway, and I'm going to get emotional.
Yeah.
It still has a really special place in my heart. But it just didn't suit us anymore, but to sell it and then move into something that didn't suit as well, oh my gosh, that would have just been the worst. Yeah, biggest fears was doing it wrong. Timelines kept shifting. And I guess the way we knew that you built was you go through all of all the homes, the display homes, which conveniently were in the next suburb over. And then you go, yep. No, I don't like that. No, I don't like that. Oh, I like this one. Oh, will this one fit on our block? Yes, no, maybe. Most of the time the answer was no. And so we had friends in the building industry who worked in the building industry. They had said that they were happy to look after us. But again, none of their plans fit. Our frontage is like 5 meters. We've got barely any street frontage, and we're now behind 2 other houses. So just to design for that, it was a bit weird. So yeah, we went to our friends. They went, yeah, we can take an existing design and we'll make it fit your block. We'll make it suit. And it worked. The first idea that came back, Paul's like all excited because he's excited about these things, and bless him. I went, I hate it. And he was really disappointed with me. I got in big trouble. He's like, what? Why do you hate us?
Yeah, I thought I was sorted. I thought we'd decided on this. It was all good.
Oh yeah. Paul's like, let's move on this thing. Let's get in this house. And I'm like, it's all wrong. This is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong. This doesn't suit our family, and this doesn't suit our family, and this is wrong. And he was disappointed that I was disappointed. He just wanted me to love it, which is he's the best man ever. I've got a fabulous husband. So send it back with a few, suggestions. Came back again. It was better, but still it just didn't suit. And so then I was taking it, and you call it serendipity, I call it hand of God, actually, because seriously, we had a week. We got 3 kids. We had a week in that September where we had no children. We'd moved out of the other house. We were in the new house, and then all 3 children went somewhere else on camp or up to my sister's. And so it was and Paul had holidays off. He took a week off. So it was a week of him and me and the plans. So it was so good because we took these plans this concept that we'd been given, tape measure, and we walked through so many display homes, and we're just comparing, the concept with reality. And, we walked into a bedroom and I went, whoa, this place is huge. Did some measuring, looked at our concept. It's the same. Oh my gosh. So then, after going through and making lots of notes, I, as a teacher, I was trying to massage this and make it work, and I just got so frustrated. I went, there's got to be a better way. We went out to dinner. I said, hon, maybe we need to look at an architect. And I said that dreaded A word, because it's like, we can't afford it. I don't know. We don't know if we can't afford it, though, because we haven't spoken to any. I think the very least we can do is at least investigate and find out if it's definitely not an option, because At the moment, we can't keep going the way we're going. It just isn't working. I'm having to massage spaces and make suggestions, and we need a design professional. The volume builders do a great job for what they do and for the service they provide. They build to a budget, and that's their specialty. And we had a budget. So for us, that was a good way to go. And, they were going to look after us. They were friends. But in the end, we said, look, we're really sorry. I just don't think this is going to work in terms of our block and in terms of our family. I think we need to go looking for a professional. So yeah, went home, started looking up architects. And then at the end of that week, we had a 2-hour drive. Cue Undercover Architect. I looked how to get it right. Seriously, I put in those words.
You wouldn't be the first.
I know. Well, you chose well, Amelia. You did very well on your because I just went, hey, there's got to be a way that you can get this right. How do I build and not stuff it up? How do I find information on how to get professionals? How do I find information on whether an architect or a building designer, or who do I go to first? Or do I talk to a builder? Well, we talked to builders and that didn't work. So maybe we do need to talk to some architects. I sent off a couple of inquiry emails before I found you. Pretty much they all came back and went, honey, your budget's too small.
Yeah. And so you had 2 hours obviously in the car listening to Undercover Architect. For you, what was, everything that you're saying in terms of looking at a plan that was going to go on your block, which I'll put a site plan in the show notes so that people can kind of see that it's not a traditionally shaped block, which then can make trying to find something off the plan super challenging in any instance. And I think when you're in a kind of like that cul-de-sac position where you are overlooked by more houses than you would ordinarily be, you're dealing with orientation and overshadowing, but you've got the privacy of having a narrow frontage and you want to maintain that privacy the whole way around the block, and all of those kinds of things that lots of people do go down the route of just trying to massage a solution from something else, never kind of going back to that helicopter view. So it's a great credit to you that you went, hang on, Nat, we got to pull up stumps here for a minute, get ourselves back up to helicopter view. What are we actually seeking to achieve here? And let's look, have we chosen the right approach? And because I think what a lot of people do is they make the very understandable mistake of just keeping pushing down the line that they chose at the beginning and trying to make it work and work and work, and not realizing that there were other alternatives that they could have chosen sort of 5 steps before. So when you started listening to Undercover Architect on the podcast, like where did you start and what did you, I suppose, in terms of how that was sitting with your budget expectations and the nerves about whether, a design professional was going to be the right approach for you, and your timelines, like how did you start to kind of pull all of that together and it not get overwhelming of, oh gosh, this is actually going to take a lot longer than we anticipated, or this is going to cost more than we anticipated? Like, what did you sort of do to reconcile all of that mentally and still keep getting yourself educated about it?
Yeah. Yeah, well, at that point, nothing was set in stone. We were still under contract. So if we wanted to pull out, we could. We just would have had to go find a house to buy. But, we were still keen to keep going. And for me, just do the next right thing. Just take the next step. And my dad gave us some really good advice. He's like, well, just push on the door. If it opens, go through. If it's a bit harder, you either need to push harder or find another thing to do. Or if it doesn't open at all, well, that's it, you're done. So, every step of the way, we kept pushing and it kept opening. So the first thing, of course, on the way home was, are architects too expensive? Just what does an architect do? What does a building designer do? What does a draftsperson do? Those ones. I don't think we got to the ones where you actually spoke to them yet, just the first defining ones. So they came later, which is, I think, again, so funny and so serendipitous that we stopped there. And then went back right to the beginning to all the orientation stuff. And I knew a little bit about it, but everything I was listening to, everything you were saying, I was like, yes, that's it. Oh my gosh, that's it. 100%. And so went through, consumed in volume, like most people, a lot of the podcast as much as I could, you know, even in yoga class. I distinctly remember doing a bit of salute the sun, listening to you talk about a cul-de-sac and how to design for a
Downward dog and listening about designing for
Yeah.
west-facing sunlight.
There's only so much of the breathe deeply. Like, this is getting a bit boring. I think I need to listen to something. Just relax. No, I'm not here to relax. I'm here to learn and move
Got to be productive.
and make the most of the time we got, people. Anyway, so yes, I've consumed a lot, you know, those first few seasons, and the more we listened to, the more we went, yeah, actually we do need to find a professional to design for us. And the more you talked, the more what we wanted in the house got confirmed and crystallized. And then, you know, you started talking about how the feel and the function of each room, and your room notes, that they were so good because I could answer all of those questions, I guess, just based on having lived in one house for a while and it not working, having moved to a new house, but also prior, as a young person, I moved a lot. You know, I lived in a bazillion different houses. My husband, no, not so much. So yeah, for me, it was a lot clearer how the house needed to function, how the house needed to feel, how each room needed to flow into each other. The weirdest thing was knowing all of that, understanding all of that, but having absolutely no picture, no clue what the house might actually even look like. It's really weird. So yeah, I started writing a brief, and then it was not brief at all. I think at one stage it got to 43 pages.
Yep.
I edited as much as I could, but I think it still was in the 30s. Sent it off to a few different professionals. Really helped having your questions of, you know, how to vet. That's when I started getting onto Instagram, because I went, well, if this person is a good person, then let's look at all the people they follow. And that was actually really helpful. Had massive lists of builders to contact, massive lists of architects and building designers to contact. Again, it's 2022 by this stage. Nobody was available. Yep. Or they were available, but they didn't want to build to our budget. Or they were available, but they didn't want to, or the builders themselves didn't want to come down to our side of town. So, oh, man, it was frustrating in that way. But then we listened to your, what does an architect do? And who is the architect? But then Aaron came on and I went, oh my gosh, he's in Wynnum. He's just around the road. And he's on the same page. We are on the same page as this guy. Yep. We could work together with him, I reckon. So I think we ended up getting in touch with him at the beginning of the year, 2022. And he's like, yep, thanks. I'm so glad you got in touch. Glad you're following through Amelia. I can see where you guys are at. I'll be available Easter. Well, you say you can work with our budget. Let's just go with that. Because at that point, that was a win for a designer to say, yeah, I build to all budget. I design to all budgets. That's fine. Let's go with that. But I'm not available now. You know what? That's fine. We can wait. Easter, it's a few months. We'll, you know, work on that. We'll get a brief together. We'll fill out your brief. We'll just keep going through life, because, you know, life happens. And so it is a part-time job, all of this, but it's a part-time job that's sometimes really naggy and then sometimes really not. Sometimes it's just easy to ignore and just keep on going with your life, and before you know it, another month's moved on. So, except the friends and family, they go with that house.
Can I just track that? Oh, no. Yeah. Your friends and family can be, it's like, why is it taking you so long? Anyway, can I just track back? So you were looking initially at a settlement on the block of land around November 2021. That pushed out. you September 2021 was when you and Paul had the week together of no kids, Paul not working, the two of you being able to dedicate some energy and attention to it, and then the 2-hour car drive where you had found Undercover Architect and you could start diving into the podcast content. You joined Home Method in October of 2021 and started obviously learning, and some of the stuff that you've been speaking about in terms of the checklists and those kinds of things, and the room notes are all resources inside Home Method. And so then you're getting in touch with Aaron from Green Coast Designs at the beginning of 2022. He's saying he's not ready to start until Easter of 2022. I obviously, you sent me through a copy of your brief, which you took the questions that are in the brief builder that's supplied in Home Method, but you've turned it into your own document. And I said before we jumped onto the recording that having, read through that, it was amazing to see how I could immediately know how you and your family tick, and what a house, as a professional designer, I could see what a home was going to need in order to support you best, because of the effort with which you'd gone to describe yourselves, your lifestyles, the goals that you had for the home, where this fit into your overall lifestyle goals. And then, of course, you were using those 5 Fs, the functionality, flow, feel, furnishability, flexibility, to define each of the rooms and to think about how that sort of fit into the overall whole. So obviously that putting together that document would have taken some time. How did you're sitting there going, okay, well, we know we want to build. I'm nervous about building because it's obviously starting from scratch. It's not a conventional block. We've had this experience of trying to massage a house that didn't work. And I'm also got a budget that I've sanity checked with a few designers who said, no, it's not enough. And now I've found this designer that has said, look, we can work with it. I'm imagining that you've shifted your budget a bit at this point from 450. You've shifted it up to a different level to sort of reflect some of the changes in the marketplace.
Yeah.
So do you remember what was, you've got this new knowledge. You've obviously upskilled yourself in understanding more about the orientation of the site. You've done this work to uncover and think a lot about who you are, what you want, and what that's going to kind of need to be. And like you said, you don't necessarily know what it's going to look like in a house, but you've got a really clear understanding of how that house needs to function and feel in order to accommodate you and the lifestyle that you want to lead. So do you remember what was important to you in sort of then thinking, okay, how are we going to use the next few months before we start working with Aaron to really make sure that we're going to hit the ground running and that this is going to work really well from the outset? Obviously I can imagine you didn't want to waste any more time at this point. You really want to get going. So what were you sort of seeing was going to be important in that kind of navigating the initiation of that relationship with him?
Yeah. So social engineering on my husband's part, basically watching everything we could that Aaron had put out, consuming any kind of post or video or anything that he'd produced. That was helpful because that gave us a better idea of, I guess, his values, the way he worked, an understanding of the overall process. Again, Green Coast is very helpful in the way that they give a good overview of this is how it's going to work. We have this meeting, this is our fee structure. He's also flexible, I don't know if he'll thank me for saying this, in the way that he can structure his fee structure and how much he will do for you. Of course, every design professional has full fee service and they'll do everything for you where to go. But he said, I can see that you're not going to want that, especially with the budget that you've got. And then we had a bit of a discussion as well with him about project spend. About project spend, because he says usually what happens is, and you said the same thing, you've got this magic number, but then all of a sudden something happens and you go, well, maybe I can find some more money in those months. So yeah, the main things we were doing was finding out about Aaron. We were talking with finance and looking at what our finance options were. We were also looking for builders, and because we were aware that they book up months, sometimes years in advance. And then once we found the builders, doing all the background checks on those builders. We and yeah, there was a couple of, not actually many phone conversations, lots of emails, but most of the builders would, while we were waiting for in that time, they were, oh yeah, don't come to Brisbane, don't come to your side of town, don't work with your kind of project spend, aren't available till 2025, that kind of thing. So when we did find somebody who was awesome, quick, let's book in a conversation. I think we had 3 phone conversations with 3 different builders. We had a meeting with a Zoom meeting extended with 2, with one, and a face-to-face with another. And we used your myriad of questions. It's a lot of questions. I felt a little awkward.
I always say you can just blame me.
And then budget-wise, talking to finance, what really helped was, again, just by accident, in the move, we, were trying to rationalize our belongings. And one of those things was all of the paperwork that you end up having. So my husband found a pay slip from when we first bought the house. And that was, documentary evidence of 19 years prior of what he was making. And he also happened to find our repayments of what we were repaying. And we worked out percentage-wise and went, oh, okay, what would that look like in today's money? And went, oh, actually, 450 is percentage-wise a lot less than what we were paying back then.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we go with the same percentage, so out comes the Excel. Now I'm not very good with Excel, but at least I can do a little bit. Out come the Excel. Okay, so we've got 450, 500, 550, 600, 650, all the way up through to 800. How much, if we're going to spend, here's all the different amounts we could possibly spend in all the world. And yes, interest rates are on the rise. So if the interest rates are at this amount, I think at the time they were 1 or 2% still, but slowly creeping. If it's at 1%, we're paying, this is our weekly, monthly repayments. And this is the percentage of your income. What percentage are the repayments at each different price point? It was a very useful exercise and really eye-opening, because all of a sudden, these amounts that we could never have even dreamed about spending 5 years previous were actually not that bad.
Yeah, it's a really interesting, just to make it black and white. This is the thing, numbers never lie, yet we can load them with so much emotion and, baggage and all of that kind of stuff. When you're seeing them in a spreadsheet like that, that must have been really powerful to adjust your expectations of what you could actually afford, and then what that was going to mean for your project spend overall. And yeah, Aaron does talk about project spend, because he's very much of the opinion, as I hope that a lot of designers and builders and architects, I feel this is actually the really best way for them to approach it, is that it's not your position as a professional to tell your client what they can or can't afford. Your position is to take what they're telling you and then educate them about what they can get for that money, and then let them determine, is that representing value in their eyes, and to help them see where that value needs to actually play out in terms of where they're going to invest money. Because some people will see value in all of the luxurious fixtures and fittings on the surface, but won't see value in getting it built properly or designed for orientation and it being energy efficient. And so you as a professional sort of educating them, well, what does value mean to you, and where is it actually going to be embedded in your project for a good long-term outcome is really important. So
yeah.
And so,
sorry, before you move
on,
one more thing that we were doing in there was going through the home method course as much as we could. And I think for me, being a top-down sort of sequential person, I like to have the big picture view. It was the most helpful thing for me at that point was having the list of professionals. And who do you contact at what point, and who's going to be involved in your project? Because and I find this with pretty much anybody I've known who starts a renovation or a building project, the first thing is, who do I call? Where do I start? Who do I ask about this? I don't want to inconvenience anybody. I don't want to ask dumb questions. I don't want to go to the wrong person, and have them say, sorry, or worse, go to the wrong person and have them be a really super helpful person, come in and try and give you advice, but they're not actually the right person to give you advice at that point. So just, yeah, that knowing that we aren't going to make any false starts here, knowing that we are talking to the right professionals, and that along the way, we aren't the ones who are going to have to find the engineer, after talking a bit more with our professionals and confirming. So we're going to need, these kind of professionals. Do we find them or do you? No, it's okay. I will find them, or I will get you in touch with my people. I'm like, totally fine. If you trust them, works for me. Just having project managed and done our renovation ourselves, I was the one contacting everybody, and I was the one initiating all of that. But there's just so many questions and so many, what do I do here? Who do I call? And just, yeah, all my friends are in the same position. They want to extend their house. They want to do some renovations. They want to maybe put on another story. They go, I guess I'll call a builder. Now I can tell them they're not usually the best person to call first. Have you thought about maybe calling someone who specializes in design and talking to somebody about what you actually want from the house? Yeah, but yeah, that for me, that was in that time the most helpful thing. Going through the home method course, finding out who the professionals were, contacting the ones that we had to ourselves, and just educating ourselves as much as we could about what this whole process is going to look like. Yeah.
Fantastic. I think that's it's a really great look at, okay, we are now at what a lot of people think is the start of their project. So we're at the point where we're actually going to speak to our designer for the first time and potentially start putting pen to paper to make this house look like something on a drawing. So we've now officially started, but you've already spent months and months and months doing a bunch of stuff to get yourself to this point. And so your project started, probably 7 or 8 months prior, when you were first thinking about, okay, we went with this, we did this option, it didn't work. We then found this information. We then bought Home Method. We then started writing this brief. We then thought more intently about what we wanted to create. We started, and you're using all of the questions and those kinds of things. So it's really interesting how much preparatory setup you've invested in to get yourself to this point. But as a result, you can now actually hit the ground running in terms of that relationship and hitting on the design. And so were you intending then to have a builder also help you from the get-go using the paid as consultant process or some kind of collaborative process so that builder could be informing you? Was that your intention?
It's what after having listened to so much of what you produce, we thought this is a really great way to go. And we knew that Aaron was completely open to it. The main hiccup was none of the builders that he worked with were available for this. So we found one guy who was going to be available and he was more or less willing. But once we started meeting with Aaron, he said, okay, so let's just get the concept going first. There will be a point at which we do need to test this and we do need to run it by a builder and sort of begin to be a bit collaborative. Let's not involve them just yet. Let's do the work together ourselves and then we'll see how we go. So yeah, the intention was there to work collaboratively, but it didn't happen right from the get-go, which actually ended up being really good because the builder that we got was a contact of Aaron's, and Aaron went and tested the design himself with Dwayne, another Dwayne. Anyway, with Heslick Homes, and he said, what do you think? I don't like walking into a house and going, "Whoa, these people have got lots of money." I did not want people to do that for us. I want them to walk into and go, "Wow, what a lovely home." It's not about show. It's not about splashing cash. It's just about building something worthwhile that will suit our family.